It is hard to believe, but it is week 14 already of the Climate Tech Inc. NFL prediction show. We're in December now. We're cruising along. We just got through state championships. High school football is now complete. So this is really about the only football talk we have for a little bit, as I'm beginning to prep for the draft here coming up later this month. We've got that coming up here in a few months from now. Hard to believe. Time continues to fly. Cole McDaniel here alongside me, Vince McKee, and we'll jump to Vince here in just a moment. But a reminder, we want to talk about our wonderful sponsor, Climate Tech Inc. And for 48 years, family owned and operated, Climate Tech has been the premier company for all HVAC services for both residential and commercial. They have it covered. They offer free estimates on equipment replacement and 24-hour emergency service. Visit them at climate-tech.com. So, Vince, I'm wearing the hoodie, still trying to warm up from state championships. It was cold up against the glass. Obviously, Tony Bogan, the real trooper, being down on the sideline, taking all the videos. He was out in the wind. We at least didn't have any wind up in the press box, but it felt pretty darn cold up against the glass in that front row. But we had a great view of all 7 of those games. We had a great time covering it.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I agree with you completely. It was a blast. Look forward to it every year. The hospitality is incredible there. The food, the view, everything, right? But we were up against that glass, pretty cold. Didn't do myself any favors. Last night went and covered more high school sports. So I was out in the elements again. It wasn't that bad. Tonight we went and checked out some Christmas lights, and tomorrow is actually the big one. As you prepare for the draft, I'm right into girls basketball again. So tomorrow night, a pretty big game. Check us out. Check the full recap out. It will be Magnificat versus St. Joe's. So we always talk about the Holy War of football with the Nations and Eds. This is the big one when it comes to anytime St. Joe's plays Magnificat and anything. So very excited for that. Cole, as we get to this week, I am very excited to give my as we always say, heart over head, my head prediction as to who I think is going to win the Heisman, and my heart prediction as to who I want to win the Heisman. So that's that. And also, was doing some research, and all 3 of these things have happened in my lifetime. Well, first of all, no NFL team has ever won the Super Bowl 3 years in a row. Nobody's three-peated.
Mm-hmm.
Basketball, the last time a basketball team did it was the Lakers way back in the Kobe and Shaq dynasty. They three-peated. And then baseball was the Yankees at the very end of the 90s. So as I attempt a three-peat here in our Pick'em Challenge, and I'm currently down by 4 with only a few weeks left, it has me very nervous. But to hedge my bet, three-peats are not what they used to be. It's very difficult to come by. So if I don't have a miracle comeback, at least I know, you know what I mean? It's not rare company. It's very tough to three-peat. That being said, I think 5 weeks to go. We got some playoffs after that. So all kinds of good stuff to talk about. What amazes me, and we'll get to it in a second, though, about this NFL schedule, looking at it, my chances of catching you are slim, my man. 13 games this week. How in the world do 6 teams have a bye when here we are on December 6th, coming up on the December 12th week of football? That's nuts. But let's go ahead and let's get to it, because that to me, though, I'm like, how am I going to catch him with only 13 games this week? It's a stacked deck.
It's not going to happen this week. You're going to need multiple weeks strung together, but we have a lot of time because you and I do the show all the way through the postseason, so we have all the way through the Super Bowl. That's plenty of time to catch up and get 4 games back, but it feels like we've continued to trade some blows, and it feels like as soon as you get one back, then I take one back again. So I feel like we've been hovering around 3 or 4 games different for, 5 weeks now? 6 weeks now?
And here's the big difference. I used to win those close games, and as I'm sitting there, we get home from Maggie's basketball game. Before I started watching the Browns, I had the Browns on tape delay. I sit down there and I see the Jets and the Vikings, and the Jets are coming down to the wire. They have the ball, they have a chance to win it, and they don't. So it was in your favor. Those games used to be in my favor. This year's turning the tide a little bit. So I now understand your frustration last year when I was winning some ridiculous games because the Jets had 2 cracks at that, blew both of them. 2 different chances. The Jets should have won on 2 different drives and could have pulled it off.
enjoy it while it lasts, because the Vince McKee luck usually begins to happen at some point during our prediction season. We will see what happens this year, but so far, I'm holding out hopes that I can maintain that lead. First, we're going to jump into college football, though. A little too
Yep.
early to talk about the bowl games because we're a few weeks out here. Bowl game season right before Christmas, around the 18th, 19th. That's when you start to see some maybe lesser quality games start to trickle in, and we can start to talk about some college football in our prediction show when it actually comes to physical games. This week, the big talk is the Heisman. And who's going to win the Heisman? Well, the 4 finalists have been announced after all the votes have been submitted. Who are the 4 going to end up in New York? Well, Caleb Williams of USC, CJ Stroud of Ohio State, Stetson Bennett of Georgia, and Max Duggan of TCU. So 4 quarterbacks. And not surprising about Duggan, Stroud, and Williams. We all knew they were going to be the guys there. Blake Corum, I think, of Michigan, has maybe a little bit of an argument and maybe something to be able to gripe about or complain about, because I think if it weren't for being injured against Ohio State, I think he'd be one of those 4 there. He had a phenomenal season as a running back for Michigan. He's a guy who's in that conversation I thought should have been one of those 4. Hendon Hooker had a great season, so people are talking about Hooker and why he's not there. Instead, Stetson Bennett's there. Hooker's injury, I think, is what's costing him as well. I would have said because of Hooker's injury, and I would have leaned towards Blake Corum being there. Marvin Harrison Jr. maybe had somewhat of an argument when it comes to a wide receiver standpoint. But like I said, I thought Blake Corum should have been that guy. It just probably happens to be him being out for the Ohio State game as to what makes him not there. Don't get me wrong, Stetson Bennett had a good season. Georgia's undefeated, so I understand that. But I think it's almost like a collective career thing where they're looking at him and how he's performed the last 2 years, and they threw him in there, and yeah, doors opened up because of those injuries, but I don't think he should be one of the guys there. But congrats to him at least for making it. But I think pretty straightforward. He's probably that guy in that 4th spot that snuck in. We'll talk about our rankings. I'm sure we're on the same page there with that. But Vince, I'm going to toss it to you. Your thoughts on Stetson Bennett getting in?
I actually have him 4th. So I kind of agree with you. 3,425 yards, 20 touchdowns, next to only 6 interceptions, and also ran for 7 touchdowns. But the big thing that gets him in, like you said, kind of a career, almost a career achievement award. They're back in the well, they had to beat Ohio State, and we'll get to that later. But they're back in contention again for another national championship, at least appearance. And I think that's why he made it. No, I don't know if Blake Corum gets hurt or plays against Ohio State. If anything changes, what's going to be the big difference there? I truly don't know. But either way, neither of these guys are going to be your Heisman Trophy winner, whether it was Blake Corum or Stetson Bennett. So I wanted to answer that question first. I'm going to go ahead and tell you who my heart wants to win this award and who I don't think is, unfortunately, because I have him ranked 3rd, and that's Max Duggan, quarterback on TCU. About week 6 of the college football season, TCU started creeping up on everybody's radar. And when that happens, you start paying attention to them more. And I actually watched 3 of their games, read about a couple other, and got real invested all of a sudden in TCU football, something I've never done in my life. And why is that? Max Duggan. So this is a guy who elevated that team. A lot of other guys, you could take Stroud off the Buckeyes or Bennett off of Georgia or Williams off of USC. They're probably still going to be as good, if not maybe a little below that, with a different quarterback in that position. Max Duggan was that team. He just, to me, and I'm shocked, as me and you were sitting there at Tom Benson Stadium and watching it live, I'm shocked TCU didn't come back and win in overtime against Kansas State this past weekend. And depending on how you look at it, they might have crossed the goal line there. Maybe they should have had that touchdown. Who really knows? That being said, you look at Max Duggan, 3,321 yards, 30 touchdowns, only 4 interceptions. The guy ran for 404 yards, and they had comeback victory after comeback victory after comeback victory. They were never out of it. This guy was a gamer. Absolutely loved Max Duggan. So for me, in my heart, I would love to see this guy win. And that's no offense against anybody else in the running. Two, obviously, I think a lot of people have it. C.J. Stroud, quarterback here with Ohio State. We got to see him, 12 weeks in a row this year. I think 12 weeks in a row or 13, something like that last year. We've seen a ton of this kid. I think he's a stud. I think he's going to go to the NFL. I think he's going to tear it up. I think at the end of the day, you're going to see guys like, Justin Fields and C.J. Stroud. We're going to have two Ohio State alumni quarterbacks in the NFL doing well. But that being said, it's hard, and with as impressive as his numbers are, and I know you're going to get to him because I know you know so much about the Buckeyes, but overall, when you talk about Caleb Williams of USC, 4,075 yards, 37 touchdowns, only 4 interceptions. The guy ran for 372 and 10 touchdowns. And there I was Friday night after that St. Ed's game, go back to the hotel, pop it on. I'm watching him. He's limping up the field, trying to lead them back against Utah. This guy is all heart, a hell of a player. At the end of the day, I don't know if he's going to be unbelievable in the NFL at the next level. Who knows what's going to happen there? I actually don't have high hopes for him. I personally think this is where he kind of tops off. We'll see. But I think if I was to have to put money on this, and I truly believe this is going to be one of the closest Heisman votes ever. But I do believe Caleb Williams walks away with the trophy.
Yep. Yeah, no, that's interesting. Yeah, we'll see what happens with how those guys translate to the NFL and Stroud and Williams. And I'll get to this here in just a moment. We're on the same page. Stetson Bennett at 4. I think that feels pretty straightforward. I feel like he's the guy who snuck in at the 4th spot, just had enough votes to be able to get into 4, and it just feels like a career achievement award. I don't have any will against him. I'm happy for him. I actually like Stetson Bennett. He seems like a good guy, and I've enjoyed his story and enjoyed seeing him play. But he's been average. The defense has been really good. He's had good pieces around him, and he's been remarkably average. And it's been enough to win games in his time in college.
Doesn't turn it over.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he really doesn't. He just does a good job of managing the game for them. That's what Georgia needs. So I've got him at 4. I'm not on the same page of my heart's not wanting Max Duggan to win. I have not bought into that TCU program. They've snuck by with some wins. They finally got caught by Kansas State. Yeah, it probably should have been a touchdown. It seemed like that was over the plane. I'm a little surprised by that, but Kansas State was the better team for most of that game until the very latter stages, and they almost blew it and let TCU get back in. I just think TCU's really been getting by so many games by the skin of their teeth, and then they'll have an occasional big blowout like they did against Iowa State recently, but they've just been getting by teams. I don't think they're as strong as what people think. I think the Big 12 conference just in general is a bit of a joke. There's good teams, but there's no great teams in that conference right now. And if I'm Ohio State or Georgia, I am hoping that TCU beats Michigan. Yeah, everybody out there who is a Buckeye fan who wants the Buckeyes to upset Georgia and then face Michigan and have a really nice battle, like a legendary game. Your ideal script is if your team comes out against Michigan and gets revenge and beats them in the national championship, you got bragging rights. But what if it doesn't go right? What if you lose that game? Then you have to deal with Michigan beat you in the national championship, and the script is flipped where you have to deal with that. I think the best chance for Ohio State, if they can upset Georgia, is if TCU wins. I'm not saying that they wouldn't beat Michigan. I think they could. It's hard to beat a team twice in a year. I feel like Ohio State might have a little bit of an upper hand. But TCU should be the gimme, I think, of these 4 teams. I've never really gotten behind TCU yet at this point. I'm hoping they win, and I just think whoever wins the game between Ohio State and Georgia takes the whole thing. Doesn't matter who they go up against, but fingers crossed for me that it's TCU, because I just think it would be a rout in the national championship. Now, after kind of slamming TCU, Max Duggan, credit to him where he's really helped them out to win those close games. He's had a good season. But by far and away, I think he's number 3. I don't think he's really in that mix up there in the conversation. It's close between two guys, and it's CJ Stroud and it's Caleb Williams. CJ Stroud and Hendon Hooker, for about the first half of the season, were in a battle with each other for the Heisman. Pretty neck and neck, and it even went a little bit past midway through the season. Hooker started to slow down a little bit, and so did Stroud. But Hooker's injury dropped him out of that conversation. Stroud had the Heisman in the bags. And you know what I noticed as Stroud seemed to have the Heisman in the bags? At the same time, it almost seemed like he started to play conservative himself. I think he's a very well-composed player, well-composed quarterback. I like that about him. He never gets too high or too low on his emotions. But I think at times that can be a problem. Yeah, it keeps him from turning the ball over, but it prevents him from sometimes making the big play, the extra effort. And yeah, there's times to just throw the ball away, make the smart decision. But there are times where I'd like to see him have more fire, where he's getting on his teammates a little bit more when they're not performing. He's firing that team up. He gets after it a little bit more. You see just in his eyes, rather than that frustrated, maybe glazed over look, you see that fiery, I'm going to come out and I am going to take this game over. I thought he's got conservative towards the end of the season. Okay, there's a lot of things going on. There's talk about him, being a top 2 pick in the NFL draft, which I expect. So that's got to be weighing on his mind. The Heisman weighing on his mind. You had an undefeated team that you were helping try to win and get to the national championship. He had a lot of pressure on him. But at the same time, I just think he was playing it safe, playing it secure. And I think that had to do with him. And I think Ryan Day was doing the same thing as a play caller during that time. And he seemed to play safe, conservative, even a little bit scared when it came to that Michigan game. I just think that a combination of Day's play calling, the way the Buckeyes were performing, and maybe Stroud not lighting it up, maybe playing more conservative, gave an opportunity as his stats weren't as impressive as what they had been. It wasn't 300-yard passing games, 400-yard passing games. It was in the 200s for a couple games. It allowed somebody to catch up, and that's Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams, the last few weeks of the season, shot up there to be neck and neck with Stroud, and at the end, I think he took him over. Let me just put it this way. I just stated it. I think Caleb Williams wins this thing. CJ Stroud finishes second. Here's why. Stroud finished the season 3,340 yards passing, 37 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. Well, I feel like stats-wise, he was beating Caleb Williams until the very end. Williams, he had some good passing games towards the end, put up some decent yards. Into the season with 4,075 passing yards. That's almost 700 more than CJ Stroud. He tied him at 37 touchdowns, tied for the lead in college football. And guess what? Only 4 interceptions. Stroud only had 4 interceptions until the Michigan game when he threw 2 in the second half. So by that mark, Williams has 2 less interceptions, same amount of touchdowns, more yards, good performances right at the end when Stroud had a loss to Michigan. I think Caleb Williams just secured the bag in the last 3 weeks or so. And that's why Caleb Williams walks away with this. Stroud finishes second. He could have easily been first if they kept the heat on and pedal to the metal in the last couple of weeks.
You know what's frustrating too for Buckeye fans? With them being the 4 seed and all of what you just said, right? Because they look so poor in that second half. Mm-hmm. And like you also said, Ryan Day kind of took his foot off the gas a little bit, but was a little conservative those last couple of weeks. They dropped so far down. People don't realize this. USC losing is how they got in.
Yeah.
It turned out that TCU Kansas State game that we were all so focused on, turns out that didn't mean anything.
Hmm.
Win or lose, it looked like TCU was going to be the 3 seed. Clearly.
Yeah.
So, I
Unless it
mean,
was a
you're telling me,
blowout.
yeah, I mean, you're telling me, well, yeah, maybe if they went and blew out Kansas State, let's say they went in and destroyed Kansas State, they're going to somehow
No,
leap over Michigan. I don't see that happening.
no, I'm
They would have had
meaning
to get destroyed
no, that's
by
not what
Kansas.
I'm saying. Yeah, I'm
Go ahead.
saying Kansas State would have had to throttle TCU
Okay. Yeah.
and beat them big for TCU to drop.
Okay. Agreed. Completely agreed. And I guess, at the end of the day, so the national perception of Ohio State has dropped so much. I actually think they have everybody where they want.
Yeah.
You have nothing to lose at this point. I think they're going to beat Georgia. I think they're going to win the national championship. I really do. I hope that happens. We'll talk about that on a different day. But like we talked about a few weeks ago, 2014, losing to Virginia Tech, zooming up from there. You've seen them do it when they get that second chance. They very rarely blow it. Ryan Day's had to hear nothing but crap for the last 2+ weeks about his play calling. Idiot fans wanting to fire him after 2 losses to Michigan, which I'm sorry, that's asinine.
Mhm.
Terrible talk right there. So, hey, I like the Buckeyes moving forward, but we shall see, as I always say.
Yeah, I guess my thing is, and we'll get to that game later. We were just talking about the Heisman, but I will say that right now, I just feel like whoever wins the game between Georgia and Ohio State wins the whole thing. That's my gut feeling. I'm going to need a couple weeks to think about who I actually believe is going to win that game between Georgia and Ohio State. I'll stand by the point of whoever wins that one comes away with the national title, but I'm going to need the next few weeks to, I think, they get over and see if there's any developments of any guys entering the transfer portal and leaving from either team, and also see if anybody gets injured the next couple of weeks. I just think it's splitting hairs. Georgia's obviously the betting favorite, but I think it's splitting hairs when it comes to what we might see. Georgia's not a high-powered offense. Ohio State is a high-powered offense. Georgia's a more stifling defense. Ohio State can be, but they give up big plays. And the problem is they can have 100 plays per game and 95 of them are good, but the 5 that aren't can be very, very costly. And we saw it against Michigan. So I'll need time to think about it. But you and I are on the same page when it comes to the Heisman. So let's turn to the NFL, though. There are some former Heisman winners still in the NFL. A former Heisman winner that also this week got waived by his team, hit the waiver wires, and obviously I know this is one thing we're beginning of the season. We weren't going to be talking about the name too much, and I don't even have to say the name. Everybody knows who landed in Los Angeles. It's hilarious to me that person is bouncing around the league here at the moment and just filling in for an injured Matthew Stafford. Super funny, but there are successful players who won the Heisman still in the league here at the moment.
He wanted to go to the 49ers, and wouldn't that have been the ultimate kick in the sand or sand in the eye for Cleveland? If he would have went to the 49ers and the 49ers won the Super Bowl, I'm sorry, but I wanted to sleep for 6 months.
No, I'm glad it didn't happen because Christian McCaffrey would have probably lost his mind because he just escaped playing with him. And then if he shows up in San Francisco, McCaffrey would probably be so annoyed by that he got away.
Can you blame him?
I would be annoyed. But the interesting thing is nobody else, apparently the reports are, nobody else put in a waiver claim aside from the Rams. Not a single other team. Not a single other team.
Story for a different day. I could go 25 minutes on that subject.
I figured I'd just give that to you since we were talking about Heisman winners.
And Christian McCaffrey was probably like, please God, no. He probably looked at his phone and was like, please God, no, don't do it.
So let's turn to the marquee matchup here. And a team that, no, they didn't bring in that said person, but they are playing a backup who I actually think is one of the best backups in the league. The Baltimore Ravens are playing against the Pittsburgh Steelers. And the Baltimore Ravens, I find this game actually quite interesting. They have the better record. They're one of the teams really competing. It's the Ravens and the Bengals competing for the division. But Lamar Jackson going down with the injury. Hey, Tyler Huntley was the guy they had to turn to this
He's
past
good.
week. I like the way he scrambles, the way he moves, but I think it's one of those things where it's hard to toss him in mid-game, and against Denver, against a good Denver defense, they struggled. They snuck out the win because Denver's offense is horrible. But, 10-9, that's all it took to win that game. But coming into this week, they had the week to prep with Tyler Huntley. Not expecting Lamar Jackson to be back. At least midweek, it doesn't appear like that's going to be the case. I think Huntley's a good quarterback, but the Steelers are getting healthier. The Steelers are getting better. They're starting to put things together themselves. It was a close victory against the Falcons. Kenny Pickett's looking a little better. Are they offensively firing on full cylinders? No, absolutely not. But I think the Browns fans are loving seeing the Steelers win, knowing that the Steelers have no chance to do anything this year, and they're hurting their chances at getting a better draft pick. They just keep moving later and later back into the first round, which I think is good for really the rest of the AFC North, that the Steelers aren't going to get some phenomenal draft pick with how they're trending right now. But Vince, I'm going to start this off by saying that as much as I like Tyler Huntley and the Ravens, I just think the Steelers are actually on a little bit of a run. And they're a team that I feel like is really bad. Aside from they got some really nice pieces on the defense, but they're starting to get healthier. They're starting to perform better. They're the favorites in this game without Lamar Jackson. And I actually think they're able to defensively shut down the Baltimore offense enough that I have the Pittsburgh Steelers winning this game. Like I said, that's going to help the Bengals out if the Bengals can take care of business against the Browns. And we'll talk about that game here later. But it could certainly shake things up in the AFC North if the Pittsburgh Steelers do defeat the Baltimore Ravens in this game.
The Baltimore Ravens are getting dinged up while Pittsburgh's becoming healthy.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a major problem there. I actually do have Baltimore. That was one of my upset picks. Now, obviously, I can't use it as the upset pick because of it's our marquee matchup. I don't see well, first of all, real quick, I agree with you 100% that Huntley is good with a full week of practice. And I think we saw that time and time again. Before all the Deshaun Watson talk heated up for the Browns, I wanted to mind him coming to Cleveland to see what we had with him. Quite frankly, I wanted the Broncos to pick him up. That was my main thing last year, is Denver doing whatever they can to get him. They could have got him for like a third round, fourth round pick maybe. Instead, they sold the farm for Russell Wilson. That being said, I think the guy's very, very talented. I see Baltimore winning this week because they are right there with Cincinnati for the division. It's a must win. And overall, I think they're the better football team. Health, as always, concerns me. Let's see how banged up they are. Let's see if they can get through it. But I'm going to go with Baltimore on this one.
So we're split on that. Interesting with the multiple AFC North division matchups. Could, like I said, really shake things up this week. And we're already starting off split there. Again, only 13 games this week. But we're gonna fly through these games here a little bit faster here today. But yeah, it's gonna be a fun one. We turn to Sunday Night Football, and the Chargers go up against the Miami Dolphins. The Dolphins, they've got a little West road trip going on right now as they're going to SoFi and playing against the Chargers. I'm going to say that the road trip out West doesn't go well for the Dolphins. Again, they're favorites in this game. Going up against the Niners, they didn't get that job done. And I just think staying out West, not going back to Miami, to be able to return home and play, I just think being on the road, that Justin Herbert and that offense has enough to put up enough points and maybe a bit of a shootout against the Dolphins. I got the Chargers winning 34-28.
Chargers are due a win in a close game. They keep losing all these close games. Really, I think the only close game they won was against the Cleveland Browns. My God, I won't spend a ton of time on this. All I'll say is that Chargers team that I saw going far into the season and into the playoffs in the preseason, I don't know what happened to them. I don't know if it's a combination of bad coaching, bad decision-making, injuries, bad luck, whatever. Like, I never saw this record at this point in the season for the Chargers. I'm stunned by it. But sticking to my philosophy I had a few weeks ago. I want to continue to pick who I think is the better team. Now, I'm going to pick the Chargers. The problem here, though, is that Tyreek Hill is so darn good, and Jalen Waddle is so darn good, and the Chargers secondary stinks right now. That worries me. That really concerns me, quite frankly. But I just feel in this situation, again, I'm kind of picking from behind as well. Wanted to go with the upset in this one. So actually, our first two picks, I'm picking an upset both times, but I can't use it as my official upset pick because it was premium. And this is actually the Sunday night game, right?
Yeah,
You
it's
just said that, right? So Sunday
it
night
actually
game.
it got flexed. You know,
Yeah.
it wasn't going to be the Sunday night football game, but about 2 weeks ago they flexed it. Probably a smart decision. Should be a fun game. Now, you keep bringing up upsets. So let's hear it. What's the official upset pick this week then, Vince?
Yeah, I do. I have three of them. I have three I could choose from here. Any, mini, money, mo, Arizona. So Arizona has kicked me in the backside all year, right? Every time I pick them, they lose. A few times I picked against them, they won. They have no business beating the Patriots, but the Patriots to me are a team in turmoil. I mean that. Their last couple wins have been very fluky. Arizona's 1-6 at home. I mean, 1-6 for the Cardinals. What gives? Like, no one's going to pick them to be 1-6. They're due a win. Kyler Murray's back. They're pissed off. Obviously they're not going to do anything this season. But New England has had all kinds of drama going on. Mac Jones erupting on players in the huddle, challenging play calls, all kinds of nonsense. So I actually think we're going to see a stunner on Monday night when nobody's paying attention. They're too busy with their holiday shopping and everything else. Monday Night Football, I need a win. I'm going with Arizona. Is New England the better team? Yes, but I'm going all upset here, Arizona.
So you're 4 games down. You're trying to pull it off where you make the comeback. I don't think it's going to happen this week. My upset pick's Arizona.
Ah! Come on, man.
I've got the Arizona Cardinals over the New England Patriots. I'm with you. The Cardinals were one of 2 teams that were on a bye week this last week. They had an additional week to prep for the Patriots. They are at home. The Cardinals are due for a win over a Patriots team that, like you said, in some turmoil. They're hitting some bumps in the road. They're struggling. It's a Patriots team that is not performing the same as when they really outperformed the Browns in Cleveland. So yeah, I've got the Cardinals as well in that one. We're on the same page with our official upset picks.
I know we're short on time, but I love the fact that you were able to keep a straight face during my entire explanation there, knowing that you were going to burst the bubble. So I might as well give you the other two real super, super quick while we have a minute to do so. My other upsets, and these are lines that still could change by the time the game erupts, but right now both of these teams are listed as underdogs. I'm like, I got to take them. Minnesota and Tampa Bay.
Yeah, I have Minnesota winning that game. I don't know how they're underdogs in that one. I actually went with the 49ers over the Buccaneers. Just because even though the 49ers, they're going to be down to Brock Purdy, I think their ultimate goal is they're just going to control time of possession. They're going to run the ball. They're going to find a way to get the ball to Deebo Samuel, and their defense is good. And Tom Brady and the Patriots have not been able to put up points. They snuck out a win against the Saints. But yeah, the Buccaneers struggle to score more than 17 points per game this year, it feels like. So I have the Niners just edging them out in a low-scoring dud of a game, but they walk away with it.
Cross-country trip on the road for Tampa Bay on a short week. So all odds are against them, but I'm going to go ahead with Tom Brady.
So as we turn to the Cleveland Browns playing against the Cincinnati Bengals. Earlier this season, Vince took the Bengals. It was Halloween, Monday night. You took the Bengals, I took the Browns. I ended up walking out correct on that one. That might be one of the games that's actually separating us here right now, was because of that.
Began. Yep.
Absolutely. And in that game there, the Browns just showed up and did what they've done to the Bengals the last couple of seasons. The Bengals just have not been able to figure it out, and the Browns have had their number. Now, this past week, the Browns, people said Deshaun Watson couldn't fix the defense and special teams. Boy, were they wrong. The defense and special teams looked great. The offense just did not do much. The big thing is the Texans are so bad. The defense forced turnovers. Donovan Peoples-Jones was great on special teams. Corey Bojorquez, the punter, was lights out. Cade York was hitting his kicks. All those guys, they played really well. Deshaun Watson looked rusty, but I also have to say, if you watch the film, most of his underthrows that he skipped were throwing to the left-hand side. When he threw to the left, it's because he couldn't step into his throws because Jed Wills was getting destroyed by Jerry Hughes.
Yep.
Okay? When he was going to the right, there was one or two mistakes there, but it was mostly when he went to the left because Jed Wills performed horribly. I'm going to say this. Jed Wills needs to get on track. Deshaun Watson, I think he'll look better this week. He was more rusty than I expected him to look. But I just feel like despite the Browns having the Bengals number, I'm actually going to say I picked the Browns earlier this year, but on the road, it's time for a streak to end. All streaks come to an end at some point, and the Browns win streak against the Bengals will come to an end. I'm going with Cincinnati. They just beat the Chiefs. I think they're up and rolling. I think they'll have some new motivation. Chase is back. I just think that the Bengals will be able to do enough to win this game over the Browns.
Cincinnati as well. What concerns me is our banged up linebacking core that got even worse now with Sione Takitaki for the Browns going out for the year. Joe Burrow, are they going to be able to go ahead and expose that? You know, they have Higgins and Boyd, and obviously Jamar Chase is back, but also Hurst over the middle. They have a million, intermediate routes they could take over what is now a very weak linebacking core, right? So as long as if Myles Garrett could get that pressure, anything could happen. I'll say this quickly. You hit it on the head about Wills. If you look at that game tape, you can see where all of his rush passes were. Now, did he look horrible? Yes. Was it probably one of the worst games he's had? Yes. No one's going to disagree with that. But every single quarterback, no matter what, has a bad game. This was this guy's first game back in 2 years.
Yeah.
He's against his old team. There's accusers allegedly in the stands. All that nonsense is going on. This is a rough time for a guy to come back out of nowhere and get the jump. Give him some time. I actually had him going, I think I want to say almost positive, 4-2 in the stretch, no matter what the record was coming into it. I actually had them at 6-5 coming into this. Clearly they're not. But 4-2, but one of the two losses I had him picking up was Cincinnati. I had them losing to Cincinnati and Baltimore. Unfortunately, there's going to be no playoffs this year for the Browns. Let's see what happens. I picked against them the last time they played Cincinnati. They proved me wrong. We will see. I'm going to take a chance this week. I took a few upsets. But if you do not want to take a chance and you want to stay warm in the winter, cool in the summer, you call which company?
Climate Tech Inc. Again, our wonderful sponsor. We want to give them a shout out. Again, really the premier company for all HVAC services, both residential and commercial. They'll have you covered. Reach out to them at climate-tech.com. For myself, Cole McDaniel, Vince McKee, everybody have a great night. Hopefully the Browns win. Again, we might not left you with the most positive thing, but again, hopefully they're able to come out and pull it off, and the defense and special teams step up once again. Take care. Enjoy your weekend.